So maybe we can hang a little on them. We need somebody to hang it on. It's gotta be somebody's fault. Maybe.
My quick web search didn't turn up anybody else that was overdosed outside of the 6 victims, and it was at the time fairly prominent case. There were lawsuits going on back to the company. So
Okay.
maybe other people were overdosed,
Mm-hmm.
but at a lower level of overdose
Right.
that wouldn't cause them to immediately think that they'd been, something happened during their treatment, which could account for unreported incidents.
Right. Back to the company, maybe we can go back to them, hang it on them a little bit more, because they told the hospital they'd improve safety by 5 orders of magnitude, which is a ridiculous number. I don't know, they pulled that one out of their rectal database. But they just tell them that, and then Levinson say that was totally unsupported number, at least I think.
Even if they had, they didn't perform a real investigation.
That's
So
the
they
report that
were
we get.
probably shooting in the dark.
At the superficial and
Right.
the big report, that they didn't falsify the report, but they really overplayed and underplayed that particular report, which was instrumental in the hospitals continuing to go.
In the hospitals, they didn't demand any kind of evidence.
Well, they had this report, and, it was 5 orders of magnitude.
And they had a physical fix. I mean, the company said change this part, change this part, change this part, and it's 5 orders of magnitude better.
It looks good.
Plus, look at our report. It's the
It
Chewbacca
looks good,
defense.
it looks good. And now the other thing that the hospitals are on the fire for is the operators report that they were undertrained and overworked. The operators report they were undertrained and overworked, sometimes dealing 100 patients a day, and they did not have sufficient training on the machine. Aren't both of those the responsibility of the hospital administration? So anything on that from the hospital administrators? Do they refute that? They say they did not overwork or undertrain the operators. Did they speak to that at all?
In my research, I couldn't find anything.
Well, when we come to the machine operators, I think we'll find those charges will be made, that they were overworked and undertrained. But anyway, there was some vindication in David's report from the, yes, ma'am.
I got kind of like supporting idea in my article, and it say, since the 6th victim is not from the same hospital or
Right.
same place, so it's saying, precaution and testing are insufficient without sharing information. Unfortunately, the Prince Margaret physicist foresight was unique to their hospital. Since there were no incidents at their hospital, they never shared their muzzling idea until March 1986 at the first user group meeting.
User group meeting.
Yes, because at this time, only 11 hospitals using the Therac 25 at that time. And operators at the Keystone Regional Oncology Center, such as the case the incident happened, could have contacted other users and shared their information at little cost and with the benefit of saving lives.
A very great contribution, Ayana, right at the right moment, too. Would you not think, Mike, that it would be one of the things the FBI could have done is to set up a communications network between these hospitals? In
So the
hindsight, of
FDA
course, in hindsight.
Right, so the FDA, I would say, no, because they are required, the manufacturer to do that, to reach out to all the users and tell them about the issue.
Okay, I'm gonna widen the question. Do you not think, class, that it should have been somebody's task to assure that there was communication among the early users as a safeguard for medical software? I'm loading the question, of course. Users group, they decided to do it themselves, but we know users group, they get very low attendance.
Well, there's only 11 people that need to attend. Low attendance would be really low.
Yeah. So they didn't think to talk to other hospitals, they didn't know they had an issue, because they're
They
isolated.
didn't, because they're isolated, so they didn't know they had an issue, and I think
Yeah. The
what
company.
the hospital said is that they did report to the company, and they reached
Yeah.
out to the company, and the company said, you're good to go.
The company knew they
the
had an issue.
The company
And down.
should have known they had an issue, because
Yeah.
they're getting reports from multiple
They're the only
hospitals,
one.
they're the hub.
And if they're overworked, are they gonna want to talk about work on their off time to their fellow 11? Like, you know,
Well, no, the operators are overworked, but not the administrators.
oh, well,
I don't think. I don't
You're
know.
kidding me, right, Paul? You were in the military, right? What was your favorite thing to do off duty?
Still is.
Bitch about what
Okay.
went on at
Okay,
work.
let's, I think, now it's very important that we hear from the hospital machine operators. Sam, you're the hospital machine operator.
I got my stakeholders, operators of
A little
the,
slower, please.
operators of Therac 25. They relate to the situation by operating the computers of the Therac 25 in a separate room to reduce their exposure or for unnecessary exposure to the radiation. So their responsibility is to see that the prescribed treatment is carried out appropriately when a patient shows up for the treatments. Now, when the system was first built, the operators complained that it took too long to enter the treatment plan. So the manufacturer responded by modifying it. They modified the software before the first unit was installed, so that instead of re-entering the data at the keyboard, operators could use a carriage return to merely copy the treatment site data.
Everyone knows what that means?
That's-
Okay, just a second. Right, instead of, it's a hotkey. In other words, when you enter your email address, sometimes it remembers the last time you entered your email address, and it gives you, it just gives you a prompt. You can use this one, you don't have to type it again. So you don't have to retype information more than once. So you type it in once, then the computer remembers it, and you can use the same information just by hitting one key. So it's a hotkey use of previously entered information. Please continue.
So, at times, the operator have been known to collaborate with medical physicists to use jumper cables to override a particular safety mechanism. So if their judgment is to override it, it will not reduce safety. So, and machines need to treat enough patients a day to pay for themselves over their lifetime. So hospitals buy the machines and they need some sort of payment from the patients to cover the cost of the machine. So another kind of production pressure is generated because of concern for the patients. The patient schedule requires treatments on certain days, and it disrupts the patient's lives and slows down their treatment to have them reschedule it for another day while the machine is being checked. So if a treatment resulted in a suspension or cancel by the machine, the operator had several choices. For some machine errors, the operator could simply press the retry button and attempt the therapy over again. Now, if half of the prescribed dosage was inserted, if the machine says so, they'd keep on pressing it until they'll do it again for a second attempt, and then they'll basically even it out, they said, or if it's a low dosage. So it was in the book, I believe, that said there were like 5 treatments. I believe, was it in the book?
I missed it myself.
Okay. So when the machine suspends it and goes into a suspension mode, the control display says that there was no dosage to the patient. So the first error comes up, and then the operator presses the P for proceed, presses the enter. And for them, that was a standard operational procedure for the operator to do, to keep on pressing the P button. So it happens like 5 times. And after the 5th time, the system shuts down, and then the operator calls the technician to come and check it out. The technician comes and check it out, and he says it's fine. So they proceed to continue what they were doing until the procedure is done.
that work most of the time?
Doesn't say afterwards. And there's some interviews with the operators. So, an operator said, she can't remember all the reasons it would stop, and said that there were a lot of them. And the operator further testified that during instructions, she had been taught that there were so many safety mechanisms that she understood it was virtually impossible to overdose a patient. So now here's an interesting interview I found on this website right here, Computing Cases. So it was a interview with an anonymous operator. So they just called her Susie. So the operator was basically an operator of Therac 4. That's what she said the machine was. She said it was basically a 4 MeV accelerator. She said it was very similar to Therac 25. But I looked it up and it was hard. I couldn't find anything with Therac 4 or anything like that. But she said she remembered while operating the machines, she did not think much about whether there could be a computer software bugs in the system. She said the technology was new, and she remembered trusting the machine's components and its designers. And she also said it was really sophisticated. It made things way easier. She reports that being able to move patients more during the day, throughout the whole day, and she says that she remembers feeling good about extra time she had to talk with patients when she was working with a computerized machine. The thing that she feels that the biggest problem is that industry today is that they lack vigorous industry-wide standard certification and education for the operators. So my ruling would be that the operators are not responsible for any harm that they do to pressure of getting enough patients throughout the whole day, and the frequent malfunctions, they gave out the wrong codes, so it was just standard for them. And operators had the knowledge that if they were comfortable with the procedure, they would go with it, and if they weren't comfortable, they would go to a supervisor operator, and operator would take over their shift.
Well, that's a very radical statement. Does anyone want to attack? He says the operators are not to blame. Go, class.
So I think we're assuming that the only error that this machine had was when it overdosed people. And what I think Sam has put on the table is that these type of machines, because they're so new and the software in them is so sophisticated and the first time that they're being used, is that they had many errors. And the fact that every once in a while we would overdose somebody was really just one among many errors. Of course, it was the most severe. So the operators, seeing all of these errors all the time, and became complacent in, yeah, all right, that's fine, that's fine. And even if they didn't, if an error came up and they didn't they couldn't understand what it meant anyways. So for example, the error code 54, nobody knew what that meant. It's not in the operations manual. Neither was the error code 53 or the 3 or the 4 or the 1.
They first started going to the technicians, so
Yeah.
the technician said it was okay, and they just kept on overriding it.
And the technicians didn't know either.
What training did the technicians have? Who are they, just ordinary hospital technicians or company technicians?
Just
or-
said technician, they didn't say anything more. And they said that the operators would, since the malfunctions came
Well,
so
since
much.
there are only 11 sites, you do think the company would have a company representative technician at each site? Or did anybody know about that, yes or no?
Oh, yeah, they did.
They did, that the company did have a technician, okay.
They did, and if the technician was off duty, they would have, third-party technicians
A
come.
third-party technician, but they, there was a AECL representative at each company. And supposedly they knew the machine well enough to be able to make the right call. But Mike S. here has a challenge about the operator that was partying. Was he just a unique case, Sam?
He doesn't say anything about that.
Mike, tell him about the technician.
So once it was in,
Yeah, it's in your own book.
that, basically he just plugged in, hit the button, and then he left the patient alone and went to the
Just a rare case, isolated case.
Okay, for that, if the, let's say malfunction came up, this is when operators, they did something to the system where instead of pressing enter one time, they would enter the amount of dosage, like 12 dosages, and it would just keep going 12 times, even though if it failed or not. It just
Yo,
keeps
this is a
going.
different case. This guy turned the machine off and left the room to go to an office party while the radiation was pouring into the patient.
Didn't say anything about, didn't say no.
Was this particular operator out of line?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Nobody's to blame. Nobody's to blame. Maybe it's just growing pains. Maybe it is just growing pains, eh?
My question is, if you're an operator and it has the malfunction or whatever that you said that it only gave half a dose. Well, half a dose is 0.5, so you would do it twice, right? Why would you, as an operator, do it, just keep doing it?
The technician told you to, right?
Because,
But I mean, even morally
Okay,
or
Sam,
ethically, why
Sam
would
has-
you,
let's say he was supposed to take only 2 dosages.
right?
Because that's his treatment for the day. So if he took only, if they gave 1 whole dosage,
Mhm.
and the machine says only half that went through, he would press it again for half the
Right, right.
dosage. So we'd get like 1.5 dosages.
Right.
Now, is the operator making these decisions on his own, or has he been trained or instructed by the hospital or technician to make these decisions? I don't think operators make those kinds of decisions.
I don't think that they do, because of the malfunctions that happens so often. They just ignore the.
What if you just ignore the only half dose thing and just keep pushing enter? If the person's supposed to get 2 doses and they only got half a dose, you don't push it 6 times or 20 times until the air goes away. I mean, if you're smart, 0.5 times 4 is 2, right? Not 11 times 0.5 or what have you.
Well, this raises another
Right.
question of how many patients were underdosed. I think someone in here raised that earlier, Steph.
Yeah,
If these dosages are not accurate, you might have had a lot of underdosed patients,
yeah.
unreported also. So, yeah, but Sam's making a very strong point, that they lived in a climate of, the climate was that the errors aren't believable.
Mhm.
The climate was that the errors were not believable,
Yeah.
and that's got to be a company fault, I would say, you know.
And then I understand like, if only the system error and then the operator believed that the machine is alright, I understand that, but the operator should, have responsibility to look the patient, themselves. Because
Yeah.
they're doing it, but, and then David mentioned about the video was broken
Yes.
at the time.
Right.
But, one of the stuff, did you talk about the,
Yeah, no, that's,
Ray
David,
Cox?
she's telling you your talk.
I don't know, yeah, but, well,
Go.
yeah, cause some of the article talking about the, fourth victim, the Brian Ray Cox, it's a, while the treatment, he, after the first shot, radiation, he moved because it was so,
Yes.
hurt, and then as he flinched, he got hit again. And then after that, he even get off that treatment, and then what was that? Oh yeah, he did get up and then began banging on the door for
Yeah.
help. But why the operator didn't notice?
Okay, now these are isolated cases,
Oh.
and no one's going to support the operator in these
Okay.
cases. I draw an analogy between airline crashes. Some airline crashes, after investigations, are attributed to pilot error. Some of these errors, after investigation, are going to be attributed to operator error.
Oh.
And we've got at least 2 cases here, we're not going to fault that. However, there was a crash 2 years ago of Air France over the Atlantic Ocean, went down in the middle of the night for no apparent reason, and it was a brand-new Airbus plane with the highest software, it flew itself. And so nobody could understand why it went down, because they're in an area of non-contact in the middle. So there was no message, there was no distress signal that flew. So for 2 years, they didn't know what went down, then they retrieved the black box, played the radio message back, and in the last 2 minutes, this is a scenario, what happened? First, there was a mechanical failure, and that the airspeed indicator froze up. The reason it froze up is because the pilot made a misjudgment and decided to fly through a thunderstorm, where it gets very cold very quickly instead of going around it. So the airspeed indicator froze up. The autopilot knew it didn't know how fast the plane was flying anymore, so it threw control back on the crew, manual crew. And so the manual crew took over, and without the airspeed indicator, they didn't know they were losing speed. So for some reason, they decided to gain altitude. So they tried to gain altitude, but when they tried to gain altitude, they lost speed. And the computer, they didn't believe the computer anymore because it was giving messages that they didn't expect. And one of the messages it gave now was that you're stalling. You've lost so much speed that there's no lift in the wings, and you're gonna drop like a stone. And they didn't believe there was, so they started to drop. They lost altitude. So now they got into a vicious loop. The pilot pulled back harder on the controls, tried to go higher, and the higher he tried to go, the more speed he lost, the more he stalled, the more he fell. The more he fell, the more he tried to go higher, the more speed he lost, the more he fell. So when they played this back, you could see these pilots trying to assimilate the information, the messages they were getting from the computerized system as best they could, and being confused and not being able to make sense of it, and eventually crashing. So at first it was attributed to pilot error, because if they had not tried to make the plane go higher, but had just gone down to regain speed or stayed in level flight, then they would have saved the whole thing. However, then on second thoughts, as we have now about the Therac 25 cases, and others do also, these were very qualified, experienced pilots. But they were flying a computerized system that confused them. Now, if your computerized system confuses very qualified, experienced pilots, is it pilot error, or is it software design error? Go. So if this Therac 25 machine confuses able operators, is it operator error or is it machine design error? It's a similar question. So we're going to ignore those cases that are obvious operator error. But these ones where it looks like you have a capable operator, but he's not getting intelligible directions from the computerized system. So now the latest judgment on the crash of this Air France flight mostly exonerates the pilots, as they were fighting to save the plane as best they could without information that they needed to save the plane. Of course, all they had to do was go into a dive, but that was counterintuitive. So I just point that as an example. One, there will be operator failures, we discount those. Two, if the system is not usable by the operators, is it the operator's fault? Sam says no. Point.
Yeah, this is something that, speaking about the operators and something Steph said about how many times you're gonna call city, how many times you're gonna do that. So, looking at yourself, how many times when your email didn't open or the internet didn't open, how many times did you hit that button?
Okay, now you're doing your favorite thing, you're personalizing it. You're
Well,
personalizing
yeah, I've heard
it.
that, but it's just a
But
point.
it's in a general sense though, because
You
we've
can
all
do
done
that in the
that.
last 10 minutes of the
That's right
class,
on.
but let's not
That's
go
right
down
on.
that slippery slope of
How many
personalization.
times did you hit that button and end up with
Yeah, okay, but we're not
five
trained
pages of
professionals.
operators? Yeah.
Okay, so can anyone, other points to Sam's exoneration of the operators? Anybody not buying it?
There's not a lot the operators could have done. When the machine was set and it went into failure mode, the overdose happened like that. It was not something that you're being overdosed by radiation for 30 minutes.
No, it was 15 minutes in one case.
it was mostly in seconds though. So there's not a lot the operators can do. Yes, I agree, they should not have been at an office party, but,
No,
Yeah, it's-
the one that was banging on the door
yeah,
was 3 or 4 attempts to gain operator attention that failed
yeah.
over a period of moments. Okay, now, are we going to exonerate everybody?
I still think it's the company.
How many vote ultimately the major share of fault goes to the company?
Again, please.
The major fault lies with the company, okay? Now on counter opinions, would you say the major fault lies with whom?
I said the company.
Okay, so John, you're unprepared, but, have you heard enough to say where the major fault lies? And Sam?
I'd have to say the company now, because
Okay,
my thing is, they had, the operators complained that.
yeah, okay, just, we got it all. Now, the next question is, has it been overblown, as Steph is saying? Has too much have been made out of too little? Yeah, it's the most standard case study in all ethics classes, as some of you found out by Googling it. I did. I was amazed. I mean, all of you could have taken all of your talks from any of 100 previous ethics classes. But has too much been made of it? And Steph pointed out that these hospital administrators did not come up with any more than 6 cases, nor did anyone else.
Well, there
So
was
Mike
actually
says
7.
99% unreported, so we have a contradiction there. Mike A., you wanna speak to that
Well,
contradiction?
they took the Therac 25 out of commission, after the 6, and then in 1987, they brought it back on board, and one person got burned, and then it was gone.
They took it out again.
Took it out for good.
I didn't know about that.
Well, in that case, they made that decision that it was significant.
Yeah.
One, even at the level of 6 or 7, they
Yeah.
decided it was significant, or they knew about the 99 unreported.
That's a lot there about lost trust too. The company now lost trust of other medical institutions.
Mike, that's a big point that we
Yeah.
didn't know about before. Tell us more about this
Well, it was
1987 complete withdrawal. I didn't know about that.
It was in Nancy's, research.
Nancy now.
Yeah. we-
First name basis.
Nancy.
Hey, baby.
But I,
Personalized.
Tell me everything you know.
I have the website,
Mike,
but.
one
I
other
don't
thing I
have
want to say about your talk is it could have been a little better organized.
it. Me too. But I have the website, Killed by a Machine, the Therac 25 was the article that was in.
Okay, just the bottom line now
The
about it
bottom line
being shut
was-
down 1987.
Yeah.
FDA shut it down? Who shut it down? Company withdraw it?
Yeah, I don't know who shut it down, but the company had fixes in, they put it back, brought it back on in 87, someone else got burned and then shut it down.
I'm intrigued. Anybody
Well, I
want
have
to
the,
Google
I
it
have the,
now?
right
Who shut it
well, I have the
down?
timeline right here
Go.
of it, and it said, January 17th, second overdose at Yakima.
No, let's go right to 97, the 7th
87, yeah,
overdose.
87,
Okay,
January
okay,
87.
second, yeah.
And then the 26th, the AECL sends the FDA its revised test plan.
A little better?
The AECL sends the FDA the revised test plan.
One more time, yeah.
That was
Yeah.
before
Right,
87. yeah.
go.
No, that was.
Oh, after 87? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
One more revised
This
test
is
plan.
all 87.
Right.
So, and then February 3rd, the AECL announces changes in Therac 75, or 25. Then on the 10th, the FDA, it's a back and forth battle in 87, and it doesn't say who shut it down, but like in July 21st, it says the fifth and final revision of CAP was sent to FDA, and then that's it.
Well, I imagine the company is still fighting, it seems to be. I would imagine, and I don't really know, that the FDA decided not to support it anymore. But what about Canadian market? Did the company continue to function in the Canadian market? They are a Canadian company. Or were all 11 sites US sites? No, there was the Canadian sites too.
Yeah.
So this is interesting, because it changes some of our viewpoints as to whether it was statistically significant or not. If the FDA said it was statistically significant, that's interesting. Okay, well, we did a great job. We did a fabulous job. You guys did a fabulous job. And one of the things that a student was worried about on day one, that people in here would not talk to each other. When I suggested we flip the class, somebody was worried that people in here would not talk. I said, don't worry. Okay, I won that one. Okay, good. So now, fortuitously, we don't have time for your questions on chapter 4, which I've been aware of for some time, and I'm not at all bothered by it, because I think what we did was so much more to the intent of this course than if we had gone over what Steph calls busy work, making questions out of questions. So I think we had a highly enriching discussion. I'm totally pleased with the class. So when we come in on next time, if we have dead time, we will go over the 6 questions. We don't usually have dead time. Ayano is going to give us our 5th high-level talk on Wednesday, right? And then we have to have 2 volunteers for next week. So I want you remnants to decide if you are our next week's toast. And we'll talk about it on Wednesday, huh? Good class. Let's go home.
Yeah.
That was a good talk.
Wow.
I really tell you spent a lot of time researching that.
All night long.
And then to translate it from Japanese into English,
Sausage Johnson.
Yeah, what is this?
I actually do
Look,
that
no,
research in English. Because otherwise I can't, I don't have enough time to translate, you know.
Yeah, but then you have to research it in English, translate it in Japanese in
yeah,
your head,
yeah.
and then back to English.
True.
Shio.
Very
Very
true.
diverse group. That really helps.
Oh, wow.
You guys use a bunch of chatterboxes, that's what it is.
Makes the time go by, doesn't it?
That's
If it gets us out of the
Yeah,
busy
yeah,
work,
man. You killed the course today. Just 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
I was like,
Sorry, I
God, what? I was like, at one point I was like, is she still talking to me? I can't sleep over here.
I know, I started looking at the internet.
I was still being recorded, huh?
Oh, wow. Oh, is it going, oh, okay. Yeah.
Which way are you going?
Oh,
You
somebody.
got your lighter on the floor.
Oh, that's
right?
my California.
California, eh?
I think I'm shy a chair here in my
Oh,
row.
no, I think it's a conspiracy
tour?
between Yayo and Steph about monopolizing time.
Hey, I don't want to monopolize, but the more time we talk, the less time we do busy work.
Sorry.
Well, it's too late, we already did the busy work. You know? I had a perfect question to stump freaking Paul.
Aw.
That was my
Sorry.
whole show. I was like, this question is just for Paul. I'm
Good
waiting
for you, Paul.
since he missed the last one.
He did, he was asking me about it